So I just want to go over a couple of items with you this evening, primarily the flow of the meeting, the expectation, and just do some brief introductions. So the meeting schedule for this evening is primarily to share information. The meeting this evening is not to speak in support or in opposition of Cityhood. Back in March, the county met with our Mableton stakeholders, who I'll briefly introduce in a moment, and there was some concern with respect to some of the financial impact numbers that were shared at previous town halls. So we met, it was a great meeting, and we all walked away agreeing and deciding that we would come together under one roof at the benefit of the general public, so you all would have an opportunity to ask financial impact questions of the county, primarily our chief financial officer, and the Mableton stakeholders will also have an opportunity to address any questions of staff and vice versa. When you walked in, you should have received index cards. Did anyone not have index cards? Just raise your hand. Unlike traditional forums where there's an opportunity where we pass the mic around and people share their opinions about the subject matter, because of our limited time and because of the number of people and also the desire to stay within the confines of the financial impact of the county, I'm asking that all of you and we have an abundance of index cards, but I ask that each of you write your questions down on the index cards, and please, if you would, the questions that you write down should be in direct correlation to the information that's shared. However, if you have general questions regarding Cityhood, we'll still take those questions. The county will post those questions on its website, and we will also share a set and copy of those questions to the South Cobb Alliance to allow a fair opportunity for them to also address your questions and your concerns. I'll note that the county nor the moderators take a position as it relates to Cityhood. We have a neutral position. The meeting this evening will be streamed live. To that end, I will repeat the instructions regarding the index cards, and I will also repeat the intent of the meeting for those that may join us late in person and those that may tune in a little later on this evening. So I'll start with brief introductions, and as each of the speakers have their presentation, they will reintroduce themselves. But here in front of me, I have Drew Ressler, who is the director for Cobb County DOT. I have Michael Brantley. I feel like Vanna White doing this, but I have Michael Brantley right here. He is the Parks Director. And I have Bill Volkman, who's our Chief Financial Officer for the county. Our moderators, we have Joel Cope with the Mableton Improvement Coalition and Dante Philpott with the Austell Community Task Force. And of course, we have our South Cobb Alliance, our Mableton stakeholders. We have Trey Hutchins, we have Galt Porter, and we also have William Wilson, and forgive me, sir, Wainwright, to join us there. I'd like to acknowledge any elected officials in the room. If you're here, just wave your hand. Trey, other than Trey. Okay, Henry Luss, thank you, sir, for joining us tonight. Valerie Anderson, Mayor Pro Tem in Austell. Oh, Mayor Thurman, I didn't see him slip in. Where is he? Oh, there you are. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Mayor. And I also would like to acknowledge Michael Hughes, who serves as the Planning Commissioner for District 4. So we will go ahead and get started. Deidre, do you have a clicker? Okay, you guys have it? Okay, I will turn the mic over to Bill. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening. We'll jump right in. So we're going to start with the financial impact. So in order to do that, let's be real clear about the proposed services. And again, all of the information that we're going to be sharing with you tonight comes directly from the feasibility study. So that's what we based all of our information on. You'll notice the other 3 cities that were being proposed are shaded in green. We just wanted to leave those in as a means of comparison. So the city of Mableton is proposing a planning and zoning, a code enforcement, sanitation, parks and rec, and a limited municipal court. Okay, and then with those, the revenues that are detailed out in the feasibility study are alcoholic beverage tax, insurance premium tax, motor vehicle tax, hotel motel tax, business license or occupational tax, building permits, parks and rec fees, municipal court fines, miscellaneous, and then franchise fees. And we're going to have a slide in just a few minutes to really kind of walk through those, but I want to show you the overall impact here real quickly. So the county has to account for these in 2 various funds. So when we look at this, there's the general fund impact, which I think most of you are very familiar with. This is where we collect the majority of our property tax revenue countywide, as well as a lot of the additional revenue sources. The one unique part of this is the proposed city of Mableton does include hotels, so they would be eligible to collect the 8% hotel motel tax for those hotels that are currently in the proposed city limits. So what we're looking at here is an overall revenue impact of roughly $10.8 million. 9.8 of that is going to come out of the county's general fund. And then basically 1 million of that will come out of the hotel motel tax fund. And then there would be some one-time site acquisition revenue that would come back to the county for acquisition of parkland. Whoa. Okay. So let me just, and I apologize if you can't see these numbers. I tried to make them as big as I could, and I'm hoping the screen does some justice to these a little bit. The very first column of this, we walk through the different revenue sources that we already outlined. And then the next column over, you'll see that all these numbers come directly from the feasibility study that was done by UGA through Carl Vinson Institute. It's on their page 7. So at the very bottom of this, you'll see the overall revenue impact that the city is proposing to generate, which would be revenue that would no longer be collected by the county. That's $14.6 million. Now, I know on the previous slide I just told you the impact to the county would be 10.8. And I do want to walk through a couple of those because there's 2 key revenue sources that are different from what the county currently collects versus what is being proposed. First and foremost is alcohol beverage excise tax. The county does collect it, but we provide all of our revenue to the Cobb County Board of Education and the Galleria Authority. So in this proposal, in the feasibility study, this is accounting for $60,711. So that would have no impact to the county. It would just be business as usual for the citizens that would be paying into it, that you currently pay into it. So it's no additional fee. It would just be not a negative impact to the county whatsoever regarding revenue. And then I wanted to talk about the other one. So the next one is the franchise fees. So if you look at the column on the far right, that's where we look at the differences. So the franchise fees per the feasibility study is proposing roughly $4.7 million, where the county's only accounting for $928,000. There is a difference here because the county currently only charges a franchise fee for cable. And in the feasibility study, there is a contemplation for charging franchise fees for both for electricity, telephone, natural gas, and cable. So the cable would be the only impact to the county. The other ones would be a potential new revenue source for the proposed city. So this would not negatively impact the county in any way, shape, or form from a revenue standpoint, just the $928,000. And again, we did talk about the hotel motel fund, so that number there at the very bottom is $999,000. So basically $1 million would be that impact. All right, jumping forward real quickly. There we go. Okay, so this is a slide I think we need to spend probably a good bit of time on. So very clearly, you can see where the revenue numbers come from. It's straight from the feasibility study. This is a little bit more subjective. So in the feasibility study, they do talk about the expenses associated with the operations of the proposed new city. This is going to be a little bit different. So we worked very closely with our departments that would be affected. Primarily, the impact would come from Parks and Rec. And I know Mr. Brantley will talk about that a little later. This is a small reduction, and the reason this is such a small reduction is the county is not proposing to eliminate any existing staff and positions, simply reassign those to other areas. So this is truly basically the maintenance cost, the operation cost minus personnel, utilities, and things associated with that, and a big part of that would obviously be the Mabel House Amphitheater. So that's why you see such a small reduction when you'd think now the city's going to provide all these services, so you'd think there'd be a corresponding larger reduction. And most of our expenses is definitely tied up in staff, and we're not proposing any reduction to staff, simply to reassign those. And then on the hotel motel piece at the very bottom, the county has a contractual agreement with the Cobb Galleria Exhibit Hall Authority where 62.5% of our collections of hotel motel revenue goes to them. So we did say the reduction in revenue would be about $1,624,000 of that would have been paid to the authority. So we would see a corresponding reduction there. So total expenditure reduction, roughly $2.8 million. All right. So this is just going to get into the net overall impact is what we're looking at. And again, the revenues come straight from the study. I explained how the expenditures are generated. The overall net impact would be just over $8 million reduction to the county, net reduction. And just to kind of give you an idea of what that would look like. And I know I have the other one shaded out, but that's roughly the $8 million number that the county would have to look to address as we move forward, and that can be done through a variety of ways, and we all know how the board would have to make a determination of how they want to address that in the future. Should I pause for questions? Okay. Ross, would you like to pause for any questions related to the financial impact? Okay, perfect.
Are there any questions related to the financial impact? Any cards that we can collect? For any follow-up questions, okay, I'm headed your way. Are there any up there?
Okay, that's fair. Maybe you want to ask this question or not? Sure. Maybe you want to just introduce yourself again in the organization thing.
Still collecting? Okay. Okay. All right, so first question, and again, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Dante Philpott. I'm here representing Austell Community Task Force. So the first question, it says this is for Bill. As financial director for Cobb County, you have a good grasp on the financial impact of services and government. In your experience, does the cost expenditures estimated in the feasibility study sound accurate, being that the numbers in the study are from 2019 and prior? That was a mouthful, yes. I can read it again if you want.
I can say this, with everything that we've experienced.
Can't hear you, can't. No, not yet.
Hello, there we go. All right, we got it. All right, we're back. Okay, so that is something that we definitely looked at. We've seen our budgets increase. I know you've seen. Another one. Is this better? Better? Yes. Better? Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to stand up. I keep getting caught on the table, so I don't want to fall over. So that is a great question. So we've actually seen that on the county side. I know you've all seen it in your home personal budgets. This is something that we've looked at. Also, please keep in mind the revenues are from 2019. So the revenues are also an impact here. So we looked at this as a kind of a complete approach. I would say the expenditures are definitely going to have to be updated because everything that we bought last year is more expensive. But also from the standpoint of the revenues are generating additional dollars than they were in 2019 as well. So I think that is something that they will have to look at, but it's going to depend on service levels. And I know our individual departments are going to speak on service levels of what's provided today, and then also what, potentially what the city's proposing. So without knowing that in detail, that is something that we have a few questions about, and I think some of our department heads who provide those services will help answer those. I hope that answered the question the best I could.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
All right. Again, my name is Joel Cope, and I serve with the Mableton Improvement Coalition. And I also want to reiterate, just like the commissioner said, obviously our organization, we serve the community of Mableton, but we are a neutral party when it comes. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback here.
Slide over, maybe it's me.
I don't know. Thanks. I would defer to Ross, our expert on sound.
Only one of you can have the mic.
Okay, so I guess you have to turn yours off again. Oh, yeah, okay. All right. Okay, is that better? Okay, all right. Sorry, I didn't mean to blow everybody's eardrums out. Again, our works in Mableton, and of course, we are neutral on the idea of cityhood, so we were asked by the commissioner to test the mic. Can you hear me? Let me just turn this on.
Sorry, guys, perhaps we should just use the handheld mic if this seems to be working better.
All right. All right, my apologies. Can you hear me better now? Okay, all right. So this person asked the question, so if the cityhood effort passes, would the city cause an increase of $3 million in franchise fees?
I can only say that obviously the cities have control of their revenues, and I do know that all I can say is based on the feasibility study, there is a difference in the proposal for what is being proposed under the city of Mableton by adding those 3 additional franchise fees. Now, obviously that is going to be up to the city elected.
Okay.
Okay, I'll cover this a little bit more during our presentation. I'm Galt Porter, by the way, with the Committee for the City of Mableton. And under state law, counties are only allowed to collect franchise fees from cable providers. They're not allowed to collect it from your power providers, from natural gas, from telephone. Cities are allowed to collect all those. Now, one of the interesting things is you're already paying most of those taxes in. The utility companies are already collecting them, but they distribute the money only to cities. And I'll go into more detail. So it's like you're already paying for something and you're getting no benefit. So that's where that money comes from primarily. And when we do our presentation, I'll talk about it more.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So this question says, can we obtain copies of the studies? And we'll go ahead and answer that and say, yes, it will be posted to the county's website. And they are posted online right now.
If you go to the South Cobb Alliance website, southcobballiance.org, I believe, the feasibility study is posted there. I believe it's on the county website as well. When you go to the tab that talks about cities, our feasibility study is posted there. If you decide that you also need another place to peruse that, you can go to mabletonyes.com, and the feasibility study is also posted there. So you have 3 different opportunities to find the feasibility study.
All right, the next question. If the cityhood effort passes, and there's a discussion in the slides about $3 million being the amount of revenue raised, will this be sufficient for this new city to perform all its necessary services?
I guess I get the mic again. I would say the short answer to that is yes. We're going to go more into detail, but basically what the University of Georgia did in the feasibility study is they went through and looked at the size city this will be, and they look at numbers from all cities of approximately the same size, figure out what average services, what they should all provide. They looked at all the revenues. They went through and got numbers from a lot of information from Cobb County, and they put together the analysis of here's what it takes to run a city this size. And what they found is that the city of Mableton should be financially feasible and in fact have a surplus of about $3.2 million annually without raising property taxes at all. So that's the bottom line to the feasibility study.
Are there any other questions with respect to the financial impact presentation?
You got
You have your card? Okay, let me grab that from you. No.
One more up
That's
top.
the whole purpose of this meeting this evening. Thank you, okay. Okay, thank you. Oh, I think I'm good. Okay. Okay, so for the benefit of those that might have walked in a little late, at the top of the meeting, I shared that the questions that we will read, although you're free to submit any question you like, but the question that we're going to address this evening will deal directly with the presentation. However, those questions will still be answered, but not necessarily this evening. So if you submit a question and is not answered, then it was one that didn't directly ask about the impact. But again, those questions will be answered and they can be found on the county website. And those questions will also be shared with the South Cobb Alliance to allow them an opportunity to also answer those questions.
All right. This resident had the following question. Please explain the millage equivalent for general fund -0.14 shown on the bottom of the last slide in the presentation.
So I believe that the general fund millage equivalent that was shown on the presentation was related to one of the other cities that we discussed. So just to kind of give you an idea of what the general fund millage equivalent to is, roughly 1 mil is equivalent to about $40 million today.
And just give us a moment.
Oh, well, I guess this is a relatively easy one. Can we obtain copies of today's presentation slides, in particular the budget slides?
Yeah, I mean,
That should be posted to the county website, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect.
okay.
Okay,
Is that
so far?
okay? Thank you. Last call for questions with respect to the financial impact presentation. There's another, okay. Other?
All right, this resident had the following question. I'm over 62 years of age and do not have to pay school taxes at present. If the city's initiative is passed, will that exemption for myself go away?
As your Cobb County School District Board of Education member, that answer is no. That has nothing to do with your, this has nothing to do with your senior exemption.
All right. This resident posed a question, will Cobb County raise taxes on the revenue they will be losing from Cityhood?
So just like each and every year, the board will have to make determinations on their budget, so it'll be a policy decision. They'll take a good look at what is the request, what is the projected revenues, and then they'll have to make that determination each and every year, regardless of the cityhood happening or not happening. That process would not change.
I mean,
I
Bill,
can't-
was there a punchline in there that went over my
I can't
head?
say yes or no because I can't make that decision.
Oh, okay.
So,
Hey, I'm the politician here, not you, Bill.
You know, and when we look at $10, $11 million to any one of us individually, that's a whole lot of money. But when you consider Cobb's budget's well over $1 billion, and it will be over $1 billion if they lose this 10, 11 million, still be well over $1 billion. The amount they just raised taxes is more than what they're going to lose here. I really don't think it's about a big financial impact to the county.
Oh, so take that percentage out of your pocket.
So I know that tonight presents a very sensitive topic for all of us here. But again, the purpose of the meeting tonight is to share the impact. And I think so far we're doing a really good job with the county's response and the South Cobb Alliance response. The South Cobb Alliance will also have town halls, and that information will be shared towards the end of the meeting tonight. So this will not be the last opportunity for you to attend a town hall and have additional questions asked. But again, in sharing the numbers, we decided it would be best to have this format to ensure that correct and accurate financial numbers are shared. Because for a lot of people, that information will help them on election day, right? So that's what we want to hammer home today. So while I can appreciate everyone's energy, I just ask that we just kind of, be considerate to people around us and give them an opportunity to fully hear the presentations and the answers that are being presented. Staff will hang around at the conclusion of the meeting, and I would imagine the South Cobb Alliance will as well. So if there are specific questions that are just burning and you need to get those answered tonight, we will be here after the meeting to do that.
And Commissioner, if I may say something, and it's just a point of reference. So the South Cobb Alliance was charged with the feasibility study and capturing that information and having those 50 or so information sessions since 2017. The South Cobb Alliance has a website where all of that information is captured and you can view it. However, this is the committee for the city of Mableton, so there is a distinction between the two. I just want to make sure there's clarity. This is the committee for the city of Mableton. I am South Cobb Alliance. We are no longer advocating or presenting information per se. It is now the committee for the city of Mableton. So just for clarity, but please go to the South Cobb Alliance website. It's available. All the information is still there. It's not going to change. However, MabletonYes.com is where you can find additional information on the actual advocacy portion.
So Sorry, I did want to address something that we did have a unique question about the individual impact that the cityhood would have on individual families. Obviously, that's going to be different family to family based on use of service. So that is something that if you have a specific question about your impact or maybe your situation, maybe we can answer after the meeting. But just wanted to address that it is going to be very unique, individual to individual.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions regarding financial impact or follow-up to any of questions that have been answered already? None? Okay. Okay, the question is, how would we find out about the additional town hall meetings? I'll share a slide at the conclusion of the presentation for additional information. And before we move on, I guess we're done with the financial impact. Yeah, okay. Well, before we move to the next presentation, which I believe is Parks, I'd like to acknowledge our chair who joined us this evening, Lisa Cupid, which many of you guys know, of course, the former commissioner for this district. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening. So at this point, I will turn it over to Parks. We have additional cards here. Again, for those that might have walked in late or tuned in a little later after we started, the nature of the meeting tonight is to share the financial impact, if any, to the county. And also, our questions are being collected and answered based on the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Michael Brantling.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you don't mind, I'll stand up. Bill did it from the table, but I'm about the same height standing as he is sitting, so I always get the stature jokes. So as long I may move around a little bit, so I'm right here. Thank y'all for being here. Give you a little bit of heads up about the city of Mableton's, the feasibility study, talking about the parks specifically. One of the things that you can see from this slide is the parks and or facilities that we're talking about, the number of acreage, and then there's a couple of three at the end that we'll talk about a little bit more in detail as we go through it. But per the study, it was about 534.63 acres in the study, in the feasibility study. This is the proposed city of Mableton, the map. And that just shows you the parks that are inside the city of Mableton. And then we'll go through sort of each park sort of one at a time. And again, this presentation will be on the Cobb County website at the end. Talking about Traymore Park, of course, you've got soccer fields, a couple of restroom buildings, a maintenance building, Wallace Park, rectangle and diamond fields, maintenance building, a couple of pavilions, playground, basketball, tennis courts, Lions Park. You know, I won't have to run through every one of these. Of course, again, these will all be on the website, but these are the parks and these are the acreages of the things that are inside the city of Mableton. There are a couple of undeveloped passive parks, as you'll see, things like Bartlett, Cato. So there are not just active and or passive parks, but there's also some undeveloped properties inside. Of course, there's the Mabel House Complex, South Cobb Complex, two of our larger facilities from the South Cobb, Mableton boundary area. Discovery Park at the Riverline, one of our newest parks inside of this area. And then, of course, the Henderson property, another undeveloped park. At the end, when I was talking about the two or three, so inside the feasibility study, Mableton Town Square was not listed, nor was the Collins property. Again, we had talked with Trey and Galton William about that before. It probably just an oversight by the feasibility study committee. It was just one of those things that we just wanted to make sure of. The same thing with Sweetwater Park. So Sweetwater Park was named inside of the study, but it is outside the boundaries of the city limits of what would be Mableton proper, for lack of a better term. So once you, and I'll go back and just to give you an idea, it doesn't change a whole lot. As you can tell, it's really about a 5-acre difference once you think about it, but it does add in 2, take out 1, so it roughly the same thing. So it's not that big of a change. Bill talked a little bit about the financial impact, and he's much better at the financial numbers, of course. As you can imagine, two of the larger expenditures for the city would be the Mabel House complex and or the South Cobb complex, simply because the South Cobb complex has an aquatic center and a recreation center. An aquatic center is one of those specialized facilities that takes a little bit more simply due to the fact that it being an aquatic facility. And the recreation center is a pretty good sized recreation center. So that plus the Mabel House is again a large sort of specialized facility. It's got an art center, it's got a historic house, it's got the amphitheater, it's got a few things that just sort of make it a little bit different than just being a park. So those are the two real big, sort of revenue and expenditure streams that you'll see. I know in the study, it doesn't necessarily talk about the Mabel House in detail, and that's one of the things that, it's from our standpoint of looking at it from the feasibility study, it just doesn't give us a whole idea. I'm sure that the Cityhood proponents have an idea. It's just not listed, so we really can't talk about what that's going to be. I will say this, and I hope I don't, I'm sure there's going to be questions about it, but somebody's asked me about this a couple of times. Sorry. Somebody's asked me a couple of times is, how is it going to be run? We can't say. We're not going to be running the parks if Mableton takes over the parks. That would be up to the city of Mableton. So that's always a question that, is Mableton going to run them the same? Mableton's going to have an elected board. That elected board's going to make the decisions, same as our elected board makes them. So that's always one of the questions that I get. But any other questions about the parks and the impact on that, we'll be happy to talk about them.
Have any questions for parks? No questions for parks? Okay. Did I see a hand up there? Okay. All right. We're getting the question.
All right. One of the questions from the residents is the Silver Comet Trail impacted by Cityhood in any way?
The Silver Comet Trail was not listed inside of the feasibility study, so we did not assume that the city of Mableton would take it over. As you can imagine, the Silver Comet Trail isn't just inside of the city of Mableton. It goes across all of Cobb County, all the way to the Alabama line. It's one of those things where I can't tell you why or why not it was put in there, but it is a beast in and of itself to take care of about 13 miles inside of Cobb County. It's probably best that one entity take care of that all the way through.
I think
No.
And if you guys need to or want to chime in on any of the questions, just let us know. So the next question that's posed is, can the agreement between the Mabel Trust and Cobb County be transferred to a city? And we'll throw that there first.
We've not had those discussions yet, but there is a trust. One of the things that the Mabel House complex itself is like I said, it's a tricky area. So the historic house and the amphitheater sits on an estate. It's the, Dave help me, it's the Rough Estate. So the Rough Estate, we have an agreement with the Rough Estate to lease that area. So we've not really looked deep into that, but that's one of the things that we would have to be a discussion on. The only property that Cobb County owns parks-wise at the Mabel House is the Arts Center. That's the only property that we actually own, and that's the Arts Center. The property directly behind the Arts Center belongs to DOT for the old bus Cobb Link. So.
So when it comes to the feasibility study is a framework in which the city would utilize to determine if we're feasible. But when it comes to operational concerns, this group here does not have the authority to make those decisions. When and if the city, the proposed city, it becomes a reality, you guys will have the opportunity to elect 6 council people and a mayor and a city manager, and those people will make governing decisions. Our job is to present to you the vision. We're just casting vision here as to the possibilities of what could be in regards to having more local control of some of the service level that people in this room have had some challenges and some concerns with. And so when it gets down into the weeds of different operational things, we could not make any, we couldn't tell you anything today and it'd be legal. It would be the job of the city council, the mayor, the city manager, in the event that that does come to pass. However, as it relates to our intentions is not to do anything that would damage or hurt the sustainability of this area. It is to work with the county as we are doing. The county is our partner in everything. And so the purpose and our intention is to do what is best for Mableton and what is best for our communities.
Sorry. But as we bring that back to the discussion of parks, Brantley, I believe that there is some additional information that you wanted to share with respect to staff. You've received questions. The county has received questions with respect to, well, what happens to staff? Will the parks be funded automatically by Cobb County? So if you would please just address that for us. Thank you.
Sure. So for Cobb County parks, specifically, we look at what we call our directed employees or affected, excuse me, and our just sort of on the verge affected. So for example, one person in this room is actually affected, and that's Mr. Robbie Edwards in the corner. Robbie is our arts technical coordinator, and he runs the Mabel House Amphitheater. So he goes to work there every day on a daily basis. That's what his job is the Mabel House. As you can imagine, there are multiple parks inside of the boundaries, and not every park has a full-time employee or even a part-time employee that goes to that facility on a daily basis. We have roving crews or roaming crews that have to take care of multiple parks. So those are on the verge of being affected, but not necessarily affected. So the directly affected employees, there's about 15. So that's 15 employees throughout the 15 or so parks that are affected on a daily basis. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it takes to run those 15 parks. There could be 2 or 3 or 4 roaming crews of 1 or 2 people that will help out this park, that park, coming from different ways. We do not base our maintenance areas. We have 3 zones in the county. One zone is what we call the Bishop Zone. One zone is what we call the Mountain Zone, and one is called the Noonday Zone. And strictly they are run out of those 3 facilities. So you got Al Bishop, you've got Lost Mountain, and you've got Noonday Park. Well, they stay in those areas of geographics simply because we don't want to be traveling all across the county every day doing maintenance. Well, we have several of these facilities that will travel across multiple zones. So that's one of the things that we look at also. So once we take into effect, the questions, once this started happening, as you can imagine, with even the first ones of Lost Mountain, East Cobb, and Vinings, the staff were asking, what happens to us? And we made a decision, talking with Dr. McMorris and the rest of the county leadership, that we should not be able to affect those employees. So those employees will stay under the direction of Cobb County Parks. As you can imagine, we're down a few people right now, so we can move them to other areas of the county where they would be needed, but we're having to keep those employees because we're down so many at this one time. So that's what happens with the staff. Now, the full-time staff, we have pretty much said they stay with us. That does not, and we have told our employees, that does not mean that if a city of Mableton were to come calling for Robbie's services at the amphitheater, I'm not going to sit there and say he can't be going to Mableton. It's one of those things. But our part-time staff, we have a lot of part-time staff. We've got about 70 to 75 part-time staff at any given time in those areas. Strictly, it's, again, mostly Mable House, South Cobb. There's a couple of other facilities that we have. Those take up a lot of our part-time. We don't necessarily have a space for them in a lot of areas, other than the fact that right now I'm so far down in part-time, I can move them to other areas. We've got 4 aquatic centers in the county, and as you can imagine, I've got pools shut down at certain times because I can't find enough lifeguards. So anybody that needs a job doing a lifeguard and wants to make a little money, see me after this, please, because we could always use someone to watch our pools. But we would be able to move those staff around for that. So that's pretty much our staff in the proposed city.
All right, this question I think is kind of a split, one for the county, one for the proposed city. What are the current or anticipated costs for operating the parks that would be in the city of Mableton? And how would the city of Mableton plan to handle those expenses?
I think per feasibility study, I'm having a look, what back was that? It was about 1.7 if I'm not mistaken, or was it 2.1? I know. 2.1. So it's about 2.1. Most of that, of course, is the Mable House. A large percentage of that is the Mable House. So the Mable House takes up a huge chunk. You got to remember, a lot of parks are not revenue producers. They're not revenue producers at all. If you have a park that's got a playground and a pavilion and a walking trail, there's no money being made at that park whatsoever. So there's a lot of give and take with things like that. So it's about a $2 million for those parks, and that's the expenditures that we've got with it. Again, you try to make the revenue as best you can, but we're always fighting that balance. There is a critical balance in that. We are subsidized. Thank you to Cobb County. Cobb County gives us the money to be able to put on the great programs, the quality programs, and not have to always make that money completely back. If we did, I think it would be a lot tougher for us to put on a quality program for a lot of people.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Trey.
We want to talk about there's a transition period. So in the event that this becomes a city, there is a 2-year transition period in which the city council has to work out those agreements with the county on how the city would move forward with the services and the different service levels. Some of the things that we have discussed over the last couple of years dealing with working with people within the community is there's nothing that stops city council from working with the existing structure that the county already has in place and through an MOU, continue that service level. Cities, their focus is to improve the service. That would be the purpose of taking the service. So when we're talking about improving the existing park service, we're talking about having the opportunity to include programming at the rec center and different camps throughout the summer and, whenever the school is out and having camps and different opportunities within the community. So the focus is how do we improve the service and how do we work even with the county in regards to how that works. Our job is to make sure that everyone stays employed. That is important for everyone in the county. And so again, the process is for city council and the city manager to work with the county to find out what's the best way we move forward. And within that transition period, I'm sure it looks like an MOU working with the county, providing additional resources to ensure that we move forward in a way that is sustainable and good for everyone. Lastly, when we looked at the revenue from the city, it easily covers 15 park employees because of the limited services that we currently offer. And we could, again, negotiate with the county in regards to additional opportunities in that place, but then also how we move forward with improving those additional services at our different parks and recreational facilities. So.
Okay, do you guys have additional questions? And then we're going to move on to transportation. Do you need a mic?
No, I got one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this question was posed. It says, how does Austell and unincorporated Austell impact the Mableton Cityhood initiative, especially with Six Flags Park bringing in taxes as revenue? And we'll pose that here.
Okay, I guess I drew the short straw on this one. Yes, Six Flags is included within the footprint as well as the big industrial park. One of the things that was important is when you look at cities, it's always important to have a balance between residential, commercial, industrial, so that you have a good tax base. Because if you're not familiar, residents use more services than they pay for. Business and industrial pay more in taxes than they use in services. So you need that balance. And actually, I think most economists would probably say we have a near perfect balance because we're just about 1/3 commercial industrial and 2/3 residential. And Six Flags is obviously included in that residential as well. I mean, in that commercial as well. And that's really, a key driver for tourism. That's how we get the hotel motel tax to a large extent. But we also want to be able to promote that to bring more economic growth to the area and use those hotel motel taxes to promote, especially Six Flags and the Barnes Amphitheater. We also look at that as the amphitheater as an underdeveloped economic driver. If you can bring more events in, more people, that will allow, one of the things that people constantly complain about is we don't have enough sit-down restaurants. Well, if you bring in tourism, you bring in sit-down restaurants so that we can have them for ourselves. And I may be straying, so I'll stop.
Yeah, also, again, I know this is so easy for us to kind of get off track, especially since you've been dealing with this for so long and there's so much information to share. But again, I respectfully ask that we stick to the questions as they are presented. And for those other items that we will reserve that information for the town. If we can make a commitment to do that.
Yes.
Are there any other questions for parks before we move on to
Okay. This question is, if the Cityhood initiative were to pass, what is the period of time it would take to go from the possession of Cobb County to the new city of Mableton?
Yes, as I just previously mentioned, there's a 2-year transition period.
I'll bring it right back. So ladies and gentlemen, Drew Ressler, our Cobb County DOT Director, I'll turn it over to him. Thanks, Drew.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight. As the Commissioner mentioned, I'm Drew Ressler, the Director of the Cobb County Department of Transportation. Cobb DOT maintains and operates about 2,400 centerline miles of roadway throughout Cobb County, as well as 550 traffic signals. We're responsible for everything from from planning to the building, operation, maintenance of the transportation facilities. Transportation, you may wonder why there are slides, and I've got 3 short slides on transportation. You may wonder why there are slides about transportation, because transportation is not a service that is proposed by the city of Mableton. So I would put this in the category of a potential impact. And as has been mentioned tonight, we're here to answer every question that we can, but there are certain questions that we cannot. The process has been discussed. Should a city be approved, then there would be time for the mayor and council to be elected and then take office and then negotiate services with the county. Transportation would be an item that would need to be discussed because of some of the ways that the law is written and then the allowances for franchise fees. So it is not directly in the feasibility study as one of the services to be provided. It is in the appendix, and there is some good discussion in the appendix of the feasibility study. This law was mentioned. I won't read this law. I'll let y'all do that as I speak. But state law, and this is around 2015, requires that when a city incorporates, they take ownership of those roads unless there's negotiation and coordination with the county. What do the roadway facilities within the city of Mableton look like? I mentioned we have 2,400 centerline miles throughout the county. 333 of those are within the proposed boundaries of Mableton. 70 of our more than 550 traffic signals that we maintain. And to note, of those roads, what do those roads look like? State routes are maintained and operated by Georgia Department of Transportation, and so some of those state routes are Austell Road, Veterans Memorial, Mableton Parkway are all state routes that the state maintains. However, we do operate the traffic signals on those state routes. All of the other roads, Hicks Road, East-West Connector, are county roads that are maintained, built, operated by Cobb County Department of Transportation. This is looking at just those facilities that are maintained, operated by Cobb DOT. 28 bridges of the 240 total, and then some of those other items there, guardrail, signing and marking, and sidewalk within the city. So implications of roadway ownership. As I mentioned, these are more in the category of questions to be answered than questions that I can necessarily answer tonight, because it does require that mayor and council to begin those conversations with. As was mentioned previously, $4.7 million is the estimated revenue to be collected from franchise fees. You see there those franchise fees that are eligible to be collected by a city, and then those franchise fees that are currently being collected by the county within the proposed boundaries of Mableton. What these franchise fees are, effectively looking through the state law, and I don't have that quoted here, but it's effectively for use of the right-of-ways, for in this case, the city rights-of-way, the city is allowed in state law to collect franchise fees from those utility providers that have gas lines, that have electric facilities or phone facilities within the right-of-way. Now, the maintenance responsibility that comes with the ownership of roads is estimated at $2.8 million in operating costs. I do want to emphasize the operating cost. That number, $2.8 million, does come from the feasibility study. We have looked at it based on our current costs, looking at the entire county, and those costs do seem to be reasonable. What that $2.8 million does not include is long-term maintenance capital. And I'll share long-term maintenance capital would be things like rebuilding traffic signals, replacing bridges, resurfacing roadways. Those items, by and large, are funded through SPLOST revenues that are dedicated to specific projects. SPLOST stands for Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. The vast majority of our capital funding does come through SPLOST. The question that may come up from that is what does that look like with a city? The current SPLOST program that began collection at the beginning of this year will collect for a total of 6 years, has projects specifically defined to be done throughout that. Any SPLOST programs moving forward would be done in coordination with the county as well as all of the cities that are incorporated at the time of that vote. And then one other note, we do, as a Department of Transportation, work very closely with the State Department of Transportation. In doing that, there are some certifications required to be able to administer state and federal funds, and that would be a service that would need to be discussed in terms of how that would be done. So like I said, I know this is really more questions than it is answers, but a brief overview of what Cobb DOT currently provides and some of those items that would need to be considered as part of any establishment of a new city.
Oh, okay, it's in the feasibility presentation. Are there any questions from the audience with respect to transportation? Any questions? Pardon? No. Her question is, or the point that she made is that she's trying to submit a question online, but we're just taking questions here on index cards. Do you need more time to? Okay, all right. Are there any other questions regarding transportation or DOT?
Okay. The question that's been presented is, how would Cityhood affect the bus system? If you're able to answer that.
It would not. Currently, the Cobb Link is provided throughout the county, and it's already in a number of our cities. It is supported both through the Cobb County General Fund as well as through grants, primarily through the Federal Transit Administration. None of those funds are anticipated to be impacted through either the feasibility study or any of the materials that we've seen from the city of Mableton.
I think there's one or two more we have. Just bear with us a few moments. Can you just grab them from Deidre and bring?
As the DOT manager, can you describe your current relationship or collaboration work with other existing cities in Cobb, and how is your budget affected?
Okay. So currently 6 cities within Cobb County. Each city is a little bit different, and those differences are incorporated through the service delivery strategy. So there's a state law that requires the county and the cities to come together to look at services and to make sure there's no duplication of services, no duplication of how folks are being charged for those services. For example, the city of Marietta largely takes care of all of their roads, all of their traffic signals. They really run the transportation from a roadway network, sidewalks within the city themselves. However, 4 of the 6 cities do not have traffic signal staff to be able to maintain traffic signals. They're fairly technical. They're really computers that are sitting out in the sun 365 days a year. And it takes a specialized technician to be able to go out to operate them, to maintain them, to have traffic signal timing engineers to be able to change those timings. The timings are very complicated. That all of the detection technologies are relatively complicated as well. And so we take care of the traffic signals in four of the 6 cities. Actually, in Austell, we also maintain the bridges. So those arrangements are each unique and are each defined either through specific agreement or through the service delivery strategy.
That's it? Okay. Can you? All right, so we have a presentation from the South Cobb Alliance, and they're going to share with us their feasibility study while Deidre work on that for us. Can you put that in PowerPoint presentation, Deidre? Okay. There. Okay. So we will hear from the South Cobb Alliance, and they will share their feasibility study. But once again, for those who have walked in late or maybe late joining us online, the intent of the meeting tonight is to discuss the potential financial impact to the county. This meeting is not designed to be an advocate for or against cityhood. However, if we wrap up early enough, or even if we don't, I'll make a commitment to stay to the end, and we will open up to the floor for questions if that's okay with you guys. And we'll handle it that way. So we'll open it up and for you guys to ask your questions, and your question that was submitted earlier, ma'am, we'll be sure to address that since we're going to open it up. I'll make sure yours is one of the first that will be answered. Once again, the intent of the meeting tonight is to share numbers, financial impact, and again, I know that there's a lot of passion around your efforts, so if you can just stay on task and not necessarily talk about the different services, etc., we would appreciate that. I know Trey very well, and I know that some things I have to,
Thank you, Commissioner. When we were being introduced in the beginning, our state representative was not here. She's here, so State Representative Erica Thomas, we want to thank you for being here. Also, Wayne Wright, who has worked with several organizations that actually have run new cities as they have come into play, and so even some here in Cobb County, and so we want to introduce him as well, because as you have questions about startup and what does that look like from a city manager perspective, he's going to be with us to kind of help guide what that conversation looks like as well. And in the future, if any meeting, if we have people that need translation services, we also have with us Miss Sarah Wise, stand up, Sarah, so they can see you. She translates here for some of our schools in the area, and she lives in Mableton, and so we have her here as well. And of course, William and Galton, myself. I don't know. Okay, so the first slide is talking about our summary of estimate and revenue, and the $3 million, what we've talked about throughout the course of the day as well. But the feasibility study, which again is in 3 different locations so that you can find it, is just an estimate that outlines what a city of this size could anticipate as far as service levels and those dollar amounts that is attached to it. As you can tell, yes, the survey was done in 2018. Since then, we have had property digest increases and things of that nature. The cost of doing business has increased, and so that's why it's just to be used as a guide to talk about how revenue is collected and the analysis of it. In this particular slide here, it talks about some of the expenditures, and of course, we talked about the services that are specifically related to the county and how that impacts the county. So we're talking about city council, we're talking about legal services, municipal court, community development, tourism, parks and recreation, and it gives you a snapshot of what some of those direct services are, and then it also gives you a snapshot of some of the indirect services and how we get to that, number at the bottom. Now, when we have information sessions moving forward, and we'll talk about the days when we're going to have that, what we're going to be talking about is the feasibility study and how it gives you a framework for how we move forward in collaboration. The feasibility study, the estimates of right-of-way, we talked about this just recently, in regards to that, and you'll notice that the study gave a low end and a high end in regards to how much it would be for that right-of-way maintenance that we were just discussing. And the feasibility study also suggested, because again, it did not necessarily study the impact, but what it said was based on the feasibility study, the city would be feasible even taking on the higher end of service level in regards to that. All right, some of those capital items that will be necessary, as we talked about, in regards to parks and recreation, in regards to some of the playground facilities, community development vehicles, and all those different things to get a city running. You have a snapshot of what we're looking at as far as that is concerned. And then we also listed out the parks as well. Now, again, the feasibility study has an error in regards to one of the passive parks and listed another park that's outside of the boundaries, and that's just because the people that we contracted with, they don't live here. So they used the best information that they had possible in regards to that, and some of that information was kind of hard to find in regards to the passive parks. And so what we have, even as a net in regards to what we will actually capture and what we have here will be feasible and in line. Franchise fees, I'm going to let Galt carry forward with some of the franchise fees conversation.
Okay, I know I briefly touched on this earlier, but it's something that's very complicated and honestly doesn't make a lot of sense, at least to me. There was a time when the power companies included the franchise fees that they pay to cities, and only cities are allowed to collect them, just in the base rate of your electric. And they were paying 4% out to the cities. So they were charging every electric customer for that and just kind of throwing it as a cost of business when they wrote those checks. And I think around 2006 or so, Cobb County and then the Association of Counties joined in, and I think some other counties joined in, and basically sued Georgia Power over that practice. And the Public Utilities Commission ended up kind of splitting the baby, telling them, well, you can still charge people in unincorporated areas half of that money, but you're going to have to charge the other half to the people who actually live in the cities. So that's kind of the way franchise fees work. If you go home and you look at your bill, if you're a Georgia Power customer at least, which I am, it says right on there franchise fee. None of that money comes back to you though. It goes to Atlanta and Macon and Savannah, and maybe it goes to Smyrna and Powder Springs, but it just gets split all over the state. The people who live in a city traditionally pay 1.8 something percent higher now on their franchise fees. So I said, well, what's that mean? I went through all my bills for 2021 and found it would have cost me $14 and some cents more a year. So it wasn't like a big impact to pay that extra. You know, it's like a trip to McDonald's. Now, when you talk about natural gas, I guess nobody sued the natural gas providers yet because they still put it right in their base rate. So everybody's still paying the full amount of franchise fees, but they're only going to the cities. And that's the way that money gets distributed. Landline telephone, that money, there aren't that many landlines left. So I seriously doubt the city would even entertain collecting that one. So I didn't really analyze it, but it would be something extra. I think it's a couple percent if they did, but, you know, it's probably not worth the effort to collect it, honestly, at this point, the way landlines are going. And the last one's the cable access fees, and the county currently charges those, and you're allowed to charge up to 8%, and that's what the county charges. You don't have to charge that full amount, and that would stay the same, probably, I would anticipate. The city could always lower it if they wanted to, but I doubt that will happen. So kind of in summary, you're paying the vast majority of these fees already, and you're only getting the cable you're getting some benefit from. What you're paying for natural gas and electric, you're not getting any benefit right now. If it's a city, you'll get benefit. And that's where most of that surplus money comes from, is out of those franchise fees that's in the feasibility study. And by state law, the county can't charge those. I don't know why. They should be able to charge them. They're providing the same access that a city does, but that's the law.
And so Galt mentioned some of those percentages. We do have those percentages here as well. And so you'll be able to get this presentation later as well. Yeah, that was it, right?
We went back to non-slide mode.
No, that was, I mean, there was nothing else.
We went out of PowerPoint.
I don't see.
There was a slide at the end with respect to your upcoming
Yes.
town
So
halls.
in regards to the, we do have 4 dates that will be coming forward, and we want to let you know what these information sessions will. So we will have town halls that will be just general information town halls. We have also said that we want to make sure that we continue to collaborate and partner with Austell Community Task Force and the Mableton Improvement Coalition to have town halls that will be all encompassing. But we also have several dates moving forward where we're going to talk again about the feasibility study, some of the service levels that we talked about tonight in regards to if any of you have interest in some of those service levels and what that looks like, and then also what city government would also look like as it relates to city manager, the council, and the mayor. And so those dates will be given out as well. And if you want to get a copy of that, take a picture of it tonight. We'll make sure you have that. Any questions?
Hold on one moment. I'll just get one at a time so we're not wasting any time. Here you are.
Okay, this is several questions. Okay.
Yes.
Are any of those appropriate to answer now, or probably not if we're hesitating? Deidre, do you have any additional cards? Thank you, ma'am. Representative Thomas, thank you for your help. So, thank you. There are questions that have been submitted that clearly we're filtering through because some of them really speaks to politics, speaks to what people's motivations might be. And again, you know, we're here to share information. And to ask those questions, I don't know that it would really answer the questions that's top of mind for a lot of people. So it's taking us a while to filter through some of those so that we can answer questions that would best benefit the entire, the audience, or at least the majority of the audience. Here's one, please ask that. And we are wrapped up early, so again, as I mentioned a short while ago, after we have brief remarks from the chair, we'll open it up and we'll have our mic and I'll come out to the audience and you can ask your questions.
This question asks, what criteria were used to determine the geographical boundaries of this proposed city of Mableton?
And pardon me, Representative, but also, and I neglected to mention this at the top of the meeting, but just if you would, the boundaries, in answering that question, if you can include the zip codes or the boundaries.
Okay. Yeah, let me talk, just to give you a brief idea of the boundaries. You kind of start at Hurt Road on the north, and you go south in between Austell and Smyrna city limits. And you go all the way down to the very bottom point of Cobb County, all the way down by Six Flags and that, just to give you a rough idea of what the city limits look like. And let me say, when we started this, we really thought we were going to be looking at 3 zip codes. The people who are in unincorporated 30126, which is Mableton, 30106, which is Austell, and 30168, which also says Austell. And we went down to the state thinking this is kind of what we're going to do, just the people who live in those unincorporated parts. Well, the state says that's not the way we do it. We have state law and regulations about the way boundaries have to be formed, and they have to be formed based off of census tracts. And what that did, they also have laws that say we can't leave an island of unincorporated Cobb County between what would be the city of Mableton and, say, the city of Smyrna, or between Austell and Mableton, because that creates what's called a service delivery issue for the county. So as they did that, they said, if you're going to do this, this is the map, and you guys can't change that. This is, if you want with those zip codes, it also comes with some other stuff. And the only people who can change it are the legislature. So that's what we went with, which is why there's a small number of residents that may have a Smyrna zip code. They're in unincorporated Cobb, just like everybody who's in unincorporated Austell or unincorporated Mableton. There's a few that have a Marietta zip code, and a few have a Powder Springs zip code. Yeah, probably 93% or so are within those first 3 zip codes I said. And then a few were pulled in because of the way the state does the mapping. They say we have to be inclusive. You know, the census tracts are defined by the federal government, and that way we're not being discriminatory as to how we pull information in. So that's how the boundaries were set up.
And just to give you some additional feedback in regards to that, we reached out to the Postal Service and our postmaster in regards to how does that affect our mail? How does it affect the city or the title in which we use on our mailing address? And they said it doesn't. A city being incorporated has nothing to do with how the Postal Service is delivered, or even the name in which you are currently living under. I currently live in Austell 30168. I can continue to use Austell 30168, or I can use Mableton 30168, provided it becomes a city. If you live in Smyrna, unincorporated Smyrna, you will still be able to use Smyrna, and whatever your zip code is, it doesn't change. Wherever your mail is coming from currently will continue to come from from whatever postmaster that is delivering it. None of those things change as a result of a city per se. You will have the ability to use Mableton if you so desire, or you can continue to use Marietta, Powder Springs, Austell, or Mableton moving forward, or you can use Mableton. It will be at your discretion. Okay.
I don't remember them all off the top of my head.
I'm sorry, what was the question? Can we repeat it for the benefit?
How many, all the zip codes? If you want to contact us afterward, give me your information. I'll be glad to send them to you. But I can also say there are people who live within the city limits of Smyrna who have a Mableton address, and I think there's at least 2 of them in this audience right now that I can see. So the post office just doesn't care what city you live in. It's what post deliver the mail out of.
But if I may, and I don't know if the intent of your question is to find out about the impacted zip codes as they currently are. Okay, so what we do know, it's all of unincorporated Austell, right? Which would be 30168.
There may be a little bit left that's more kind of to the west of what's proper Austell, but may still have an Austell zip code.
Okay.
Because we stayed to the east of Austell for the most part, and a little bit to the north.
But there will be some parcels, and I won't say all, but there will be some parcels, and keep me honest here, and 30168, 30106, essentially all of 30126.
Except for things that are already incorporated into a different city.
Right, okay. And parts of Smyrna, 382.
Yes,
Also
that's
correct.
one that has several, I know.
Okay. All right.
And also, just to say, it's only within Cobb County, because like 30168 extends into Douglas County as well.
Right,
And
okay.
this cityhood does not leave Cobb County.
All right. Okay, well, we will have a few words from the chair, and then we will open it up for everyone. So I encourage you to really stick around, and we'll pass around the mic, and you'll be able to ask
Commissioner?
some more questions.
Real quick, there was a question from the audience, and I think this is a real quick answer. I think you mentioned it before, but audience member wanted to know how long is the transition for the postal address or the post service change or whatnot.
There's no change. You can continue using what you currently have.
There you go.
Appreciate that. So all of you, I'd like to turn the mic over to our chair to share a few words and to welcome everyone here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you, Commissioner, for organizing this along with the proponents of Cityhood, and thank all the persons who are here today on the panel, our staff and our moderators for being here. And I most importantly want to thank all of our citizens who are here today to get questions about this Cityhood initiative for Mableton. This is a continuance of the county's effort to provide some objective information. And if this is like any of the other meetings that we've had, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions that you have that will fall out of the purview of just providing objective information. And as was shared by the proponents, I think there'll be other opportunity for you to be able to direct other questions to them. They're just typically, those forums have been moderated outside of the county, where there's been people both for and people who've been opposed. What can I say? We have a website that's up, and I hope it's been shared at our cobbcounty.org/cityhood. There have been questions about what the map boundaries are. You can actually go to that website, and there's a GIS map that you can zoom in and see if your location is being considered. And so just want to encourage you to do that. I've had some people ask me, will I be as engaged with this effort as I have been in the last cityhood movements? And I can just share this. What I did offer for resident communities, and if you want to get together a group of 10 or more, that I've made myself available, and I've gone out and spoken to neighborhood groups just to kind of bring the presentation that the county has to the community where people are. And just in being consistent, I'll make myself available to do that, should any of you have any interest in doing that between now and November. And I don't know, Commissioner Sheffield, this will be the last one, but if you have any questions that you didn't have answered tonight, when we get multiple questions, so we have put them up on our website for cobbcounty.org /cityhood. And we've put them there so that you can hear from or see the type of questions that your residents that live near you may have, and hopefully get some answers to those questions. But again, I want to thank you for being here tonight. I think Commissioner Sheffield is going to open up the floor for you to be able to ask questions individually, and I'll personally make myself available before the night is through, as well, I'm sure, the rest of our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. No. Okay, so here's what we'll do so we can maximize. Please stay, please stay. I know. So here's what we'll do so we can maximize the number of questions we get in. I do have a stack of questions in my hand. So what we'll do is, as we're walking towards you with the mic, if you choose to speak, if you can just step out in the aisle, that'll make it a little easier for us. And as we're walking to you with the mic, then I will read the questions from the index cards. And there was a question. Do you want to ask your question, or? Yeah, all right, we'll open it up.
God forbid.
You can hold it. Okay. Now, may I just add something too? I just ask that whatever questions are asked, that you please remain respectful to both the county and also to the South Cobb Alliance, because some of the questions that I've read so far on the index cards are not the most appropriate questions. So, while I understand there's a lot of passion surrounding this topic this evening, I just ask that we're respectful of one another. Thank you.
In the event that there is a city of Mableton and you get sued, $3 million surplus is not going to take care of things. So how are you going to sit here and tell me you won't raise my taxes?
Testing, 1, 2. She said in the event that we're sued, $3 million would not cover us. So the feasibility study is a snapshot. So you will notice that it has capital expenditure, one-time capital expenditures also built into the feasibility study. Those are not annual expenses. So that's one thing. Another thing is insurance. Insurance, I'm on the Cobb County School District Board of Education, where there's a lot of legal things that happen and we have to come forward with, and we have parameters in place that support that effort and how we move forward with that as well. So, cities are not a uncommon thing, and they do function and have different things in place that allows them to be sustainable and move forward.
And again, since I have cards, to be fair, because those people already submitted, we'll do card, audience, okay? How would Cityhood impact small business owners?
Anybody want? Okay, well, I don't want to. We have a South Cobb Business Association. We have already instruments in place as far as the Chamber of Commerce that will continue to support this county. So there are a lot of things that will continue to stay in place that are not affected by cities. They actually work very well with cities with different initiatives. There's also CDBG grants and other opportunities that can be pulled down through a city to also support small business owners as well.
My question is, My question is, or I guess concern, is that why would we want to create a city when, why wouldn't if there are any inequities from South Cobb, for South Cobb, wouldn't it be cheaper for us to work with the entire county and so that there's a balance? And it just seems like it's a whole lot of work and a lot of expense rather than working with the county in general instead of creating a whole new city. I don't know, I'm just...
All right. So for the ease of the remainder of the evening, if you would just state if what you have is a question or if it's a comment also, I think that would help also. But was your a question? Okay. I've directed that to the person that asked. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a question.
Okay. All right. Hold on.
Don't talk about inadequacy.
Thank you so much for your question. So how I would like to answer that is throughout the period of the last couple of years when we put this out there with the people in the last 50 town halls that we had, a lot of the people said to us that they would love to have government closer to them. We have an amazing county commissioner and she has about 180,000 constituents and she's doing really well. But one of the things that they said, wouldn't it be amazing to have one person to 13,000 people and really get a lot of things done? And when I say one person to 13,000 people, which is one city council person that will be taking care of 13,000 people. Another thing that I will add to that is it was important that we talk about the county impact and talk about the dollars and where the dollars go. But a lot of things that we took in before we even put this bill out there, because it was years before we even put this bill together, because it's about what the people want. And a lot of things that people were saying was that, can I have my tax dollars to be put back to where I am? If I am paying taxes within this corridor of 70,000 people, can my tax dollars go to my parks? Can my tax dollars go to my code enforcement? Can I get trash pickup at my house instead of me having to pay for it? You know, a lot of people talked about that, and that's the things that we got from a lot of people, and that is one of the reasons why we are not here to say we don't want to work with the county, because we do. There are a lot of things that the county is doing great. We did not pick up fire. We think the fire department is doing great. We did not pick up police. We did not pick up a lot of those things because that's not what the people asked for. They asked for code enforcement. They asked for economic development. They asked for community development. And those are the services that we're trying to provide. And so that's not, what we want to do is set ourselves apart from the county. We want to work with the county in order to improve the services that you already have.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
I also want to piggyback on that answer and to the question. I think this is why community engagement is very important. And I can tell you that there are some things that the county has done in response to things that we've heard that have come out of the Cityhood movement. So a lot of the things that were addressed, the county is already moving forward this year with our budget that we just approved, and also with our code amendment package that will move forward. I can also say that there are some issues that were even shared from the other cityhood movements that the county responded to. So this is not to say that a new city can't address these things, but we're not absolved from addressing the interests of the citizens, even if a city is put in place. And I have seen some responsiveness already.
Good evening. Excuse me. My question is, why would unincorporated Austell be interested in Mableton? We have shops, we have parks. There's a lot going on in Austell that's not going on in Mableton. So why would we be interested in being a part of the city of Mableton? The only thing I see that they have is the Maple House.
One of the things we hear often is Veterans Memorial used to be a vibrant commercial district with everything you needed right on Veterans Memorial. And then the county came through with a brilliant idea to build the East-West Connector. And all the businesses moved up there. And they really ended up sending that part of Mableton down. Now, if you get just the city of Mableton that doesn't include that, and the city of Mableton works hard to reestablish a vibrant corridor there, well, nobody's really working and solely focused on the East-West Connector. You could have the reverse happen. We need to have one community where people, shop, work, play, and that's the idea of having everything included.
I would like just to add, this is about increasing services and the quality of life for the entire area. I live in unincorporated Austell, 30168. I live on the border. One street over is 30126. All the schools that our kids attend are in Mableton. There's not a school in Austell unless you're talking about South Cobb High School. That's the only school in unincorporated Austell, Sanders and Sanders Elementary. All the other schools, if you live in the Riverside corridor, they attend schools in Mableton. As long as I've been here, over 35 years, we have always been one community. It didn't matter whether you were in 30168 or 30126. It didn't matter if you were in Austell or Mableton. We all went to Wallace Park and played ball. We all went to the same schools. We are one community. And so as we grow together and continue to grow together, it's good that all tides rise. What is the saying? All tides rise. All boats rise. Y'all know what I'm saying. So the focus is that when we're talking about improving the quality of life, it doesn't make sense to improve the quality of life for one area and then you go down one street and you're in another area and it looks like it's been left behind. This is to improve the greater South Cobb community. And so when I look at retail and how retail is struggling currently, big box retail stores and things of that nature, it gives me some pause because I'm looking at the East-West connector. Because I was here when Bankhead Highway, Veterans Memorial was vibrant. I lived here when we had a Foot Locker and everything I needed was right there to go to school. And then I watched it decline. The East-West connector is starting to show its age. There needs to be a collective effort to ensure that the Austell Road corridor that sits in between the city of Austell and this proposed city has a community development and a redevelopment mindset so that that area can become vibrant again, so that Veterans Memorial Corridor can become vibrant again, so that the East-West connector never has to see these days. And so when we talk about improvements, that's what we're talking about. So it's not about Austell or Mableton. This is about us. Because I live in 30126. There's not a grocery store. I have to drive down the Floyd Road to get to the closest one. So when we talk about redevelopment and improving the quality of life for all, this is for the sustainable future, and having a full-time staff dedicated to making those things happen for us, that's what I'm looking for. And I'm not looking for now, I'm looking at what's gonna happen in 10 years from now, based on this collective effort of pulling together our resources to improve the greater South Cobb. Mableton just happens to be the name we use because it's already a census designated place. It's already listed. When you look at your census data, it's already there, already a city at one point in time. And so the historical aspect of it is rich. And so that's why we are where we are today.
I would also say we didn't even start out with the name Mableton. We were the group that originally started South Cobb Alliance, and we did surveys, and probably a good 70% plus, and we had a lot of different possible names. People picked Mableton, so that's how we ended up with the name of Mableton.
I think I'm toying with how to respond, and I'm just going to speak factually. I think having a unified identity for the district has been something that's been superimposed, on the commissioner. It's always referred to South Cobb, and it incorporates anything that's in District 4. So, there's always been this thought that there's this unifying character. But I can just say for the history that I've lived, I just recently moved to Smyrna, Mableton area, but I lived in the Six Flags area for 20 years. And I'm only speaking facts, that it has not always been a love fest between both cities. In fact, I could tell you when the South Cobb Redevelopment Authority was first created, there was an actual document created to show that Mableton needed its separate identity from the city, from Austell. So that's just a burden that is I carried being a resident, and I think there's opportunity to overcome. And I think, the Mableton Improvement Coalition, I think, has proved to be a good partner. At least I've seen that when it comes to zoning and in caring all about the South Cobb area. But I can't let it just be stated that there's always been a oneness. There hasn't always been a oneness. And I think perhaps this effort, could overcome that. And it's good to see the conversation about unifying the area.
Thank you for all of your comments. So we're winding down with just 15 minutes left, so I'll just ask a few questions from the cards that I have, and then we'll remain afterwards to answer the questions that you have in the audience. But one of the questions is with respect to capital expenditure of City Hall. Is there one now?
There's not currently an identified City Hall, but there certainly are facilities that could be used for City Hall within the footprint. Things like when you hold the city council meetings, they could be held at the community center. There's various places where you could put offices. There's some extra space over at the rec center area, that complex. So there's ways that it can be done without incurring a lot of expense. There's nothing that says you need to go build a city hall tomorrow and outlay all that capital.
Thank you.
There are also developers, or landowners, I should say, in the area that have approached us in regards to their land and what their desires for their land, provided we become a city. So there's opportunities in which we can utilize to move forward and create a destination or a sense of place, even as it relates to downtown Mableton or a city or a service center or service area for the city as well.
Okay. There's also a question regarding sanitation, and that's one of the proposed services of the city. So here's the question. Will sanitation be outsourced or provided by city employees? And will we implement recycling?
Great question. Sanitation or waste management is it's a generator. It's a revenue source. We have looked at neighboring municipalities, Austell, the city of Austell, city of Smyrna, and others who currently carry that service. They actually do outsource that service and provide, because of economy of scale, a very quality service to their residents. And with that economy of scale and working with different providers, city council or the city manager, they can work with some of these different vendors to provide the additional services such as the recycling piece and also streamline our service. I don't know about you, but in my community, I live on a cul-de-sac, and every day of the week, there's a trash can on the curb. Somebody's trash can is on the curb. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so having a unified service not only would eliminate that, because that is wear and tear on the roads, having those heavy vehicles come in and out of your communities every year. We have worked with different service providers currently that service our area, and we've had conversations with them in regards to what this could look like, because again, we're talking about small business owners who live right here in Mableton. They feed their children off of the service that they currently provide us, and we've talked about, we have 6 different posts or wards, and having one of those companies just use one of those areas versus having 5 or 6 different companies come in. And so there's a lot of different things that can be done creatively to ensure that we are providing a better service for compared to what we currently have. Now the question is going to be HOA. My HOA is already determined who our service provider is, and that's that. And that will stay like that.
Okay, so this is a feasibility impact study. It seemed like you guys are getting all the questions. But it reads, does the study address the impact of contingency ops, such as snow, ice events, as currently these matters are handled by Parks and DOT? I
believe there's some general contingencies in there. They didn't go into that type of detail that, hey, we're going to have a contingency for a snow matter or whatever. But there is money in there for contingencies that you always know something's going to come up, and that would be one of those things.
Thank you. Seniors, Michael Brantley, I believe this question is for you. What would be the effect on senior citizen centers?
So, senior centers were not a part of the feasibility study, so they would not be affected by this. Simple answer.
Thank you. Once we conclude. I thought you did address recycling. Okay, sure.
The question is for recycling, and I also include bulk pickup and things of that nature, because you drive down the street and you see a couch or something. That will be something that we can work into the contract to provide to ensure that we're getting an improved service. The objective is to improve service. The objective of a city is to improve services. So when we're looking at trash and different things like that, and through economy of scale, we can actually work on ensuring that we have recycling included, that we can work on having bulk pickup included as well. They actually provide some of those services when you look at some of the neighboring cities that currently provide the service through one of the contractors.
Thank you. Thank you. Did that answer that for you, ma'am? Okay.
The county currently provides a service for where you can take your trash now currently. Yeah, no, the county does. And you can continue to use the services. The county services are still here for us.
But I think the question was more specifically, will the city offer that similar type of service?
Like a transfer station?
Yeah.
No, it's a great question.
No, we want to make sure everybody's
it's a great
question is addressed
for,
because
when we get into that, if we become a city and the city council wants to look into transfer stations and different things like that, that's a conversation that we would definitely all want to have.
Okay, another question with respect to services, and speaking along those veins, will the levels of services remain the same that we are getting now, fire, police, EMS? Would that still continue?
Need to answer that? Okay, we can answer that. We're not taking police and fire, any of those quality of life and public service and public safety services. That is not part of the feasibility study. Those are not part of the framework of services. The framework of services that you see in our feasibility study are more infrastructure related and geared toward redevelopment and quality of life, not necessarily public safety. We have the best police department, we have the best fire department probably in the state, and there wouldn't be a need to recreate that opportunity.
All right, thank you for that. Let's see. It's about 8:30, and for those that know me, you know that I'm very prompt. If I say 8:30, I mean 8:30. I respect people's time. Just kind of flipping through to see if there are any others that we can answer. But again, once we break, then we will hang around to answer additional questions. I'm flipping through cards, and it's more questions that, with respect to the number of council people, those items have been addressed throughout the presentation in the course of the evening. Here's one for an impact for family. I believe Bill Rowling discussed that. It says something about commissioner, so of course, you know, it kind of piques my interest.
Commissioner, can I add this?
Yeah.
And we're going to send this to you tomorrow, Dr. Jackie. The city council map, the 6 wards, is not on the county website. we just thought about that. So we're going to make sure that we send that to you so that you can also add that to the county website so that you can see where you are within the proposed city and what council or ward you would be in regards to that. So that is something we need to get to you in the morning.
All right, good. That'd be great. All right, well, I think at this point, we will conclude. I thank everybody for joining us this evening. I encourage you to hang around. Thank you. I encourage you to hang around and ask questions. Thank you to staff. These guys are so amazing, and our county manager there, and of course the South Cobb Alliance and Representative Thomas. Jessica, Gwen, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you.